Welcome to tonight's Augusta Planning Board meeting. Thank you all for silencing your cell phones. A reminder for all who will be speaking this evening to speak directly into the microphone so everyone can hear your comments. Please address all comments and questions directly to the board members, and we will attempt to have all your concerns addressed. There are 6 items on our agenda this evening, and all 6 are public hearings. The procedure for the public hearing will be as usual. Betsy and Eva will present the application. The applicant or representative will speak next. We will then take public testimony. If you choose to speak, please state your name and address, and a reminder to address your comments to the board. We will first hear from those in favor of the proposal, then against, then neither for nor against. Once all public testimony has been heard, the applicant will have final say. The public hearing will then be closed and the planning board will deliberate. No further testimony will be heard unless specifically requested by a member of the board. We have 2 board members who have given their resignation since they've moved to different towns. We will actively be seeking applications so we can fill their seats. Betsy and Eva, we're ready to begin.
Good evening, members of the board, and I don't see members of the public here. We see applicants and staff, but my name is Betsy Poole, and I'm the city planner. So the first item on the agenda is a public hearing. It's for text amendments to the land use ordinance regarding shelters. So we held a workshop about this 2 weeks ago, and the board had some questions, which Corporation Counsel can hopefully answer some of those for us about neighborhood compatibility and other items. So, and we provided you with a memo that just has the basically what was outlined for changes to the land use ordinance with some additions for the privacy for smoking areas. But so you'd have some language, if you decide to make a recommendation to city council, you at least have something in front of you to edit and if you decide to make that decision tonight. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
I'm Matt Nazar. I'm the Director of Development Services for the city. I'm not going to add a whole lot right now. Betsy has covered exactly what's in the memo and the changes that have made. As you know, like I said, this is a public hearing technically. So after you've had any conversations, and I'm not sure if there's any comment from the public, but we can go forward from there, and I'll leave it with Cam.
Hello, Cameron Ferrante, Corporation Counsel for the City of Augusta. So I'm here tonight to answer the board's questions relating to the conditional use permit process, and specifically the neighborhood compatibility standard. I could launch into a long-winded description of the, pitfalls of neighborhood compatibility. I don't know if the board would like me to give a quick overview of my understanding of the questions and how I think the standard should be applied, or if you would like to start off with specific questions or issues that you would like to hear more about.
Why don't you begin, and then we'll hear your report back on some of our last conversation, and then we'll ask you questions, I promise.
Sure, I can absolutely do that. So,
It need not be long-winded.
yeah, I will do my best to remain concise and speak clearly and articulately on the specific points. So it's my understanding that, in the discussion of the homeless shelter and shelter conditional use permitting process, the board had some questions about what is and isn't a permissible consideration within the scope of the neighborhood compatibility standards, and also sort of what the level or what amount of wiggle room the board has in terms of its conditional use review process, specifically relating to, individuals on the property and the types of clients that might be served by a particular use subject to conditional use review. So in Maine law and across the country, neighborhood compatibility standards and conditional use approval standards are generally subject to, sort of a heightened standard of judicial scrutiny. There's concern generally when you get into conditional use approval and conditional use review about subjective applications of the criteria that are put forward in a zoning ordinance. And generally in Maine, the way it works is unless a standard has sufficiently definite criteria or sufficiently definite standards for the applicant and the board administering them to apply them and to submit an application that will include information that's sufficient to demonstrate compliance with the standard, it can be considered, unconstitutionally vague or impermissibly vague, and therefore subject to sort of discriminatory application. Those concerns are heightened when you're dealing with a housing type situation or any type of use that involves a protected or protected population or classification of individuals. Here, where the board's considering shelters specifically, obviously, shelters deal with vulnerable populations, people with substance use disorder and other mental health issues that would, entitle them to protection. So when you're dealing with the application of zoning standards to those populations or to uses involving those populations, it's important that the standard in question relate to the use itself and not preconceptions or characteristics of the individuals that will be using that service or using that particular property or engaging in the use that's being reviewed. So it's important to just focus on the use itself, the physical characteristics of the property, and apply the ordinance that way, rather than focusing on, potential behaviors of people involved there. So in this context, Augusta's conditional use standards have been adjusted to address the overarching concern about subjective applications or discriminatory applications of those standards, specifically with respect to the neighborhood compatibility standard. The wording of the city's code and the wording of that section specifies that it's supposed to be applied to basically the physical characteristics of the site itself, the building design, and the surrounding uses. It's not intended to be sort of a general overarching, impression of neighborhood character or, those types of understandings or historical uses within the area. It's really supposed to be about the physical characteristics of the site. So you don't put, a skyscraper or a bar in the middle of a residential neighborhood necessarily, or something, or, a car wash right in the middle of, a residential neighborhood, because it's not consistent with the surrounding uses. It might also not be compatible with the, building design nearby. If it's just a big block front building, it's not gonna, meld in with the single family homes that are around it or something like that. But it's not necessarily about who's gonna be using the car wash or who's going to be using the service. It's more about how that relates to the uses and the properties around it. So that's a lot of information really fast. Are there any questions, things you'd like me to elaborate on?
May I?
Yes.
The public, using our current definitions and process that we've used, come forward with neighborhood compatibility in their eyes, and I don't think our ordinance is worded specific enough to use the approach that you suggested at our last meeting. I think there needs to be some further clarification so that it's clear, not just for the board, but for the public as well, that it doesn't pertain to the people who may be using the service and how they may get there. I mean, it does in a certain way when we get to, are people going to be being dropped off by a van? Is there adequate parking and things like that? But for the public, I think it's hard for them to separate neighborhood, because we're not talking about neighborhood. We're talking about this individual site. So how it relates to the neighborhood in other areas, I think, is very confusing. And I may have been one of the most vocal people last time and wanted you to come talk to us to give us some guidance, because I do feel that the wording or the performance standards or something regarding neighborhood compatibility for this needs to be more specific in order to get where you think we should be. I don't know if anybody else feels that way.
Yeah, well, and to add on to that, Kathy, excuse me, when we see people in our or in our audience coming to speak about neighborhood compatibility, we often feel like we are, the sounding board, that they have a chance to really air their concerns here. what happens is they do so, and then the applicant has the final say, and we ask the applicant to address their concerns. And often there is a meeting, a cooperative adjustment to whatever is being proposed. Now, are you saying that that is not the correct way to do this?
So in terms of the board's responsibility, there can certainly be adjustments to the ordinance specific terminology to, clarify for the public that what we're really talking is about, consistency or compatibility of, physical aspects of the property of the use. I think neighborhood compatibility is just an overarching term that's been in use for a very long time, which is why it's been subject to all these challenges, and there is substantial case law out there about it. But I think it's largely just a carryover, and it's certainly something that could be explored. In terms of dealing with concerns from the public and statements about their concerns about neighborhood compatibility, broadly speaking, that might be outside the context of the board's review. I think it's certainly appropriate to allow members of the public to come forward and speak their concerns about a particular use or a particular application. You can ask the applicant to respond, and maybe they will offer to do something or come up with something that could address that concern. But where it would become inappropriate would be to take sort of the discussions or the concerns that I referenced before about, the activities of the people on the property and impute them into the board's determination and the board's application of conditions on the property. So you don't want to take the public's concerns that are outside the scope of the ordinance standards and bring them into the board's review. The board itself would want to stick to sort of the physical characteristics and the things that are related to the standards that it has to apply. But during the board's public hearing, members of the public can come forward with their concerns. The applicant can attempt to address them. But I would say the board should stay out of, attaching conditions that to its approval that would fall outside the ordinary scope of the board's review, if that makes sense. So the board can be a sounding board to the extent it wants to be. You can certainly remind members of the public that, those concerns seem to fall outside the scope of, the physical characteristics of the property and the application of the board standards, but they're welcome to bring them forward. Nonetheless, it's just that the board can't necessarily act on those.
Yeah, Cam, basically, one of the things we do, and it goes back to the neighborhood meetings, and I think we do ask the people, have you met with the neighbors? And if they say no and stuff, we ask them, they really should be out there discussing this stuff with those folks. Mm-hmm. What you're saying is we really shouldn't be doing that.
I don't think there's any harm in asking if they've had conversations with the neighbors and, generally have a sense of, what the attitude is. I don't think the board should take, one dissatisfied neighbor or concerns about, loitering or littering or something like that, and then use it to attach a condition that it wouldn't normally be able to attach.
Even when they come before us on a project that states they will be transporting the people by foot or whatever through the neighborhood to go 2 blocks to get someplace to eat and to be all day. And that's the way these people are traveling back and forth in the neighborhood. And what are we supposed to do? Just hear it? We can't listen to that?
I think you can hear it, but I think it would be important to consider whether that relates or has any bearing on the board's determination about, adequacy of pedestrian circulation and traffic and things like that, rather than, prohibiting people from, standing within a certain distance or spending a certain amount of time outside or something like that. It's
basically what you're asking this board to do is completely opposite of certain things we've been doing in the past for many years. Yeah. For the many years I've been on it, we've done it this way. The neighborhood compatibility is an important issue because, as Allison said, the public is here to give their comments of what they feel about this project and everything. And if we hear something, we may ask for things to be done on that area. But I don't think we've gone outside of the board of the land ordinances requiring things on that stuff, but we require that they meet the land ordinance. And I thought neighborhood compatibility is part of the land ordinance. But what you're saying is there's 2 different views at that meaning. One we've had in the past, and secondly is the one you're talking about now.
I can't say that the board has applied it differently in the past. I think it's generally been understood that it's relating to the actual use on the property and not necessarily the, overarching
The
sense.
board member, I've never had that interpretation.
Which one?
The one that is, we're strictly looking at the site when it comes to neighborhood compatibility. And I can think of one other project we had where a lady was going to develop the storage box, individual homes for veterans.
yeah.
And neighborhood compatibility was huge about, the reasons why the vets needed this type of opportunity for housing and the impact it was having on traffic in the neighborhood and the children playing in the streets and things like that. That was a very, very big part of that application.
But in terms of traffic impacts and circulation.
Well, we were talking about the characteristics of what they were doing on the site.
But not necessarily the veterans on
Yeah.
site.
Yeah. Concerns about needles, drug use in the community, all of those issues were a big part of that application.
And those issues do come up not only in
If-
that application, but in a number of different applications. We can depend on the public talking about those kinds of things.
And where
part-
it's proposed.
Part of the confusion, too, is that our definition of neighborhood in the urban compact is 500 feet around. And if you're outside the urban compact, it's 1,000 feet. So we all interpret that as saying, oh, right, this is the neighborhood, so we have a broader job than just dealing with this particular site. We want people to be comfortable with what is being proposed for their neighborhood, not just the building, but whatever is going into that building to make sure it fits.
So I wasn't involved in the veterans discussion. Had I been, I think I would have given the board some different guidance or suggestions.
I think,
But-
I think I need to see better language.
Yeah, I think we do need to clarify it so that people come here understanding what our expectation is or what our capability is.
That's certainly within the board's purview. I think I'd direct the board to the actual neighborhood compatibility language with, which already specifically states that the intent is to have the applicant design the proposed use to, what does it say, in consideration of the physical impact it will have on the surrounding neighborhood.
Physical
not-
impact can be from the people who are at the site. It could be people picking through people's trash. I mean, you could interpret that any number of ways.
Well, I mean, I'd suggest the board think about it like a pharmacy. Pharmacies are subject to conditional use under the city's ordinance in certain districts. And I don't know that the planning board would necessarily attach some condition requiring people who have the flu and are going in to buy Tylenol to use a separate entrance or to maintain a certain distance or to otherwise control their activities on the site in the interest of
I
neighborhood
think that's not a
compatibility.
good
or public health.
analogy.
So my take on this is the neighbors have no say. The only thing that the planning board can look at is if they have the right lights, the right size door, the siding. So it doesn't matter what type of shelter that goes into the neighborhood, as long as they meet that criteria of building specifications, lights or shrubbery or this or that. But the neighbors really don't actually accept that in their neighborhood, where the planning board is going to say, yes, you can put that building up there as long as you meet all those criteria right here, but the heck with the neighbors. Basically is what you're saying.
I don't think that's what I'm saying.
Well, it sounds like it.
I agree.
But basically, though,
think I'm
Cam, it's
saying-
what you're doing also, the factor is, what's going to happen now, the city has come out and made this a license. You're
Yes.
taking the licensing of this shelter is supposed to go into all the things that we used to cover. So what you're saying is the city is taking the responsibility for getting those issues, making sure they're done and looking at them, and that we are now supposed to step back from those particular items and let the city do their job with the licensing on that thing. Is that
So,
correct?
as I mentioned before, it's always been the planning board's responsibility to deal with the physical development and the appropriateness of the physical development of the property within a city.
So
And
what
it's-
I just said is right then. The city is going to take care of all the other stuff.
The
their
city
licensing.
council, in the context of licensing
Right.
review, will be handling operational aspects, enforcement elements relating to conduct on the property, impacts on the city and the surrounding areas, loitering, littering, other things like that.
Well, they will do the
the-
studies and annual reporting and all this other stuff, and the police chief and everybody will give their opinion to the city for the city's decision on putting that forth, which they used to do for us.
Yes, I mean, the public will certainly have an opportunity to come forward and speak to the council in the context of a licensing hearing. They may also come to the planning board, but again, unless it's a concern relating to, the standards that the planning board is charged with applying, the planning board can hear those concerns, but you might direct them to the city council if it's something that's outside of the scope of the planning board's review. So I don't think the neighbors are, told to go kick rocks. I think there's a venue for them. And the board certainly has leeway to hear their concerns and see if there's something within the context of the ordinance that it could appropriately be addressed. But I don't think every neighborhood concern is necessarily able to be addressed through the scope of the zoning ordinance.
Nate's had a question for a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah.
So going into neighbor compatibility, we've heard multiple neighbors come to us saying property values, something like this is going to devalue my property. How do we navigate that part of it? 'Cause to me, that would go into neighbor compatibility.
That's a good point.
So with respect to property values, that's something that's not unique to, any particular use. Lots of uses have negative impacts on property values. I think an appropriate way for the board to deal with that would be to ask for some form of objective evidence of a negative impact on property value. And then the board
But
can
how do you
assess.
square that with what you said earlier about we can only look at the site?
Because you're looking at the use on the particular site and you have some evidence beyond someone's preconception about the activities that people may engage in on the site to demonstrate an impact on property values.
And so, on that basis, is it the service that's provided that is going to negatively impact the property value? We could have the most beautiful building in the world, and it's going to be impacted by the services that are proposed to be provided.
But the appraisal will cover only the real estate side of it. That's what they're asking for. Will this appraisal affect your neighborhood? Will it affect your sales value and stuff like that? Oh, go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
There is a separate standard in the ordinance with respect to this particular issue. It says, will the proposal have a significant detrimental impact on the value of an adjacent property, which could be avoided by reasonable modifications of the plan? In determining whether or not this criterion has been met, the planning board may require the applicant to submit an appraisal prepared by a state of Maine certified appraiser. So you do have the ability to ask for that objective evidence if that's a concern that the board feels is one that rises to that level.
Because basically what we could do, if it comes with a question of the public stating that and giving the information and stuff, we then have the right to table that particular item and then move it stating
I
you must
understand
approve.
that. I'm just trying to square that with other uses. This one I think is complicated with regard to shelters because the city has adopted a licensing process that can follow up on concerns that the neighborhood has with activities that are going on site. Not all the proposals that we have in other types of operations may be the same type of thing where a licensing body will come in and answer complaints or be able to refer things to police to be resolved. That is specific to licensing. Not everything we do is licensed. And so that language he just read was specific to one of the criteria that had to do with home values. But
Yes, Nate.
So last meeting, we were talking about trash or whatever be out on the road. And I think it was Lewiston that had put something in place for them to the
good
owner
neighbor.
of the property had to maintain a certain amount of feet around. is that advisable for us to implement, or is that kind of more on a licensing end of it?
Maintain, you mean like keep
Keep
the
it
certain area
picked
clean?
up.
I mean, I think that that's more appropriately addressed in the licensing context. The licensing context, the licensing application right now requires an operational plan respecting the property and at large and also the facility, and that's going to include things like a code of conduct and, expectations about maintenance and everything else. And then separately, trash, litter, things like that, those are all subject to the property maintenance code within the city's code of ordinances, and that would be separately enforceable in that way. I don't know that the planning board should endeavor to require the applicant to do anything outside the boundaries of the property itself with respect to maintenance or those types of obligations. I think that might be.
Could we point to deficiencies in the operational plan when it comes before the planning board?
The operational plan may not be submitted to the planning board. I can't say whether it would be as part of the application or not, since it's included as part of the licensing process, but not as part of the conditional use application for the planning board approval.
Right now, Cam, is there a limit, an area for enforcement when behaviors or whatever happens in the surrounding area? Did Augusta adopt any specific things? Like Lewiston, I think it
That
was
would impute
1,350.
liability to that would make like the operator or the property owner liable.
Well, not just the property owner, but I think it's important to make the inhabitants also responsible for taking care of the neighborhood in which they would like to live. I think that's really important, that everybody have a piece of responsibility. And I think if you had that, you would have a much better chance of having the neighbors who are going to live around the homeless shelter buy in.
I don't think there's anything in the current ordinance that would obligate a resident or a client or a guest to maintain the surrounding neighborhood beyond not violating the city's existing ordinances relating to littering, loitering.
How would you handle
Those sorts of
in
things.
the neighborhood, neighbors who don't do the same thing? If they're not keeping the upkeep of the house or letting the junk sit outside, the cars sitting outside.
And that would be
Right.
handled through the city's normal enforcement process.
Those projects are not in front of us.
Yeah.
So what's a good path forward? Is there language that the board feels could be added to satisfy some of the questions?
I think so, and it may be that in this particular, if we're just talking about homeless shelters, that it talk about what the difference between the conditional use and licensing, and have that spec'd out a little bit more so that not only the applicant but the public would understand what their recourse is if there's problems.
And if there's, just to make sure I understand, if there's, can you actually just specify more what you mean? Just so, sorry, it's probably just for me to understand.
Even if it's an asterisk in the land use ordinance that overlays the licensing over it, that will come on the heels of the conditional use permit and address things not addressed necessarily by the planning board. So it doesn't end at the end of the planning board meeting.
Okay, just so the public is very clear that while we may approve a land use for X, they
Because
still
it looks
need to-
right.
Okay.
And actually, I was thinking, is there a way that, say, we do have a lot of public testimony for or against, whatever, is there a way for us to bring specific issues to the attention of the council when it moves to them for the licensing? How should we present that to them?
Is it in our minutes?
I think it could either be in the planning board's minutes, it could be in the planning board's approvals. I know those are sent to the council, but to the extent the board has specific concerns or issues were raised that you don't think will be provided to the council, I don't think there would be anything preventing you as a member from speaking to the council at the licensing hearing, or the board from sending a letter to the council identifying specific concerns that it heard from the neighbors. But ultimately, I think the best course of action would be to tell the neighbors that they'll have an opportunity to address those and encourage them to bring it to the council themselves, because that will be probably more effective than secondary testimony through the planning board.
I agree with Kathy on what she's suggesting is just having some wording pretty much state where the public can read it, look at it someplace, and the wording said licensing is going to determine this. Planning board will determine what the conditional use is, and that's it. We're going to look to the city licensing to cover these different areas, and then the conditional use, the planning board will be looking at specific project itself, and that's it.
And I think it could be a little broader too, because we license a number of different types of businesses, cannabis businesses, for example. And if we're not worried about people smoking on the street corner during, a conditional use permit for something, I'm not saying that we even need to do those anymore, but that might have been an example before we put those just strictly to licensing. Or maybe we do strictly licensing for homeless shelters.
I believe at this point, does the board still include language on all of its approvals that indicate that all additional licenses and permits at the local, state, and federal level are necessary in order to operate the business?
Only if
Is that a-
there's
is that a
specific
standard
one, I
condition of
think, that's
approval still?
missing, like a DOT permit or something like that, would be added as a condition.
Because
Betsy can best answer that.
I mean, it talks about that the project needs to commence, within 2 years, be completed within 5. Deviation from this approval is subject to land code enforcement action and potential legal proceedings. But otherwise, the specific conditions are listed, like you need to get your DEP permit, you need to get your,
Maybe we
we
add
usually
that you have
don't
to
say
get
your
your
cannabis
license.
license. I mean, we usually don't have
Yeah.
that in there.
I mean,
But
there's,
it could,
there are a couple, there's a
well,
couple.
I don't know. I
there's
mean,
a-
that would be to meet, that would be saying that they need this license to meet the conditional use standards.
So
So that's the,
the way I've seen it handled
Yeah.
in ordinances is for a statement at the end of the review process, which basically says, all approvals issued pursuant to this section shall be subject to a condition that the applicant obtain all other
I
required
think that's a good
licenses and
idea. Great
approvals from
idea.
the city.
And that could always be part of
And
the
that would
presentation.
be-
Yeah, but for some ordinance language too, so on the front end, an applicant would know. The only thing that bothers me a little bit about this process is we're leaving the enforcement end to another day, and sometimes, specifically with these vulnerable populations, it's encouraging some kind of criminalization of some of the actions that they may take while they're getting services. That's just my old social services hat.
I don't disagree. I think it's hard to pre-enforce, I guess, is the concern. Yeah, I would rather err on the side of that than policing prior to policings.
I have a concern on the size of the lot. It says half an acre or larger. So if a building is going to be put on a half an acre, can we limit the number of rooms or bedrooms or whatever it may be? Because that's not a very big piece of property to have 10, 20 people there, and then you have vehicles there. So I'm just wondering if we can enlarge that.
Well, the lot size itself is within the planning board's discretion. I don't believe you would be doing a review of the internal layout of the building in conjunction with the conditional use review. So I don't think you'd be able to appropriately
I
limit
think
the.
with lot size, you'd get into neighborhood compatibility legitimately. I mean, if they wanted to oversize a project and go up, and it's
6
not going
stories
to, yeah,
high.
I think that is something we could deal with the way you're approaching this.
Certainly, height limitations and things like that would be applicable. Just in the context of the conditional use review, you won't be reviewing the interior layout of the building, but that will, again, be part of the licensing process where the council will be presented with the floor plan and, a maximum number of beds, staffing levels, things like that.
Right, and presumably there's, I believe for shelters already, there's a parking standard requirement.
one per employee.
Yeah. And certainly if the board feels that that's not adequate, the board could consider making a recommendation to the city council on that, if that parking standard is something you don't feel is adequate,
Or the lot size standard.
or the lot size standard, correct?
Projects per project. right, per project, we would have the ability to speak to that per
think it-
project as presented.
I think Matt was speaking in the context of the recommendation for the revisions to the
Like
land
right
use
now,
ordinance.
generally speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think those were, I mean, these are minimums, so I mean, I guess maybe a shelter with 25 people might have a different impact than 500 people on a half-acre lot, so I don't know.
But we
I
would
think
chime in
that's a
at that
fair
rate
guess.
anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
Going a little bit further on that parking issue, is everybody assuming that none of these people who will be staying in these places have a car? Because you're just saying the parking is required only for the employees?
Residences now, a lot in town, we don't have a parking requirement.
But we require so many parking, okay, for apartments and everything, don't we require parking requirements?
it's one per
Yeah,
Unit.
One per unit.
yeah,
now for dwelling.
yeah.
There could be 3 people in a dwelling unit, all driving.
Yeah, but we have a little control.
I mean, I see where you're going with that, Bob. I mean, I've seen people sleeping in their cars. Well, maybe they don't want to sleep in their car that night. They want to go to the shelter. Where do they put their car?
I don't know that I have a solution for that, but I mean, certainly if the board is concerned about parking and the adequacy of the existing parking standards, as Matt said, it's something that you can discuss. But I don't think there's,
Availability of
a definite answer as to,
Off-street parking, on-street parking,
But parking
Be
is
a
part of the
consideration.
ordinance for requirements.
pardon?
Parking is part of the ordinance. Meeting their deals, conditional use, I think we would have some control.
Sure. I think that it would certainly be appropriate during a review process to talk to the applicant about what their anticipated clientele might have for vehicles. What do you anticipate some percentage of your clientele to have vehicles, and how are you going to handle those? In order to be able to appropriately address that physical issue on the site. They're likely going to be either speaking from past experience at other sites, pulling from other providers elsewhere in the state, and again, trying to get realistic data, or relying on their own experience if they've got another shelter right in the community as to what the population that they typically serve has potentially has for vehicles.
and that sort of information provided about how many guests or how many clients might have a vehicle will factor into the board's evaluation of the adequacy of circulation and parking things. So that is how that would be dealt with, as an alternative to, potentially just implementing a different parking space requirement or off-street parking requirement.
So for a next step, it sounds like what we have is acceptable, and it also sounds like adding language on, like potentially when Betsy or Eva gives an overview of a project that articulates what the planning board's role is, and then how the project will then go to council next. Other than that addition, is there any other language that would satisfy the board so we can move on to the,
I think adding the licensing portion into it at the end.
yep, just said that, yep.
Statement. Yeah,
But there could be projects like the Veterans Project that
there are a lot of.
has no licensing.
I'd say that was a contract zone we were talking about at that point, and it was
Okay.
tabled. So it was a different, not,
Forgot about that.
Not comparable.
okay.
Bob?
I'd like to move this on to the city council for their deal with our recommendations and wording that we've talked about tonight.
I think you should open it up to the public.
Yeah, you want to.
a public hearing,
Do
so-
the
Pardon?
public,
We have
it's a public hearing.
Yeah, you're right. That's right. I'm sorry. Thank you, guys. That's why Cam's here, right?
That's Matt called it out. That was-
All right, so if there's no other questions right now for the applicant, is there anybody from and you will have the last word. Is there anybody here from the public that would like to speak for the project or for what we've discussed? Is there anybody here to speak against? Is there anybody who would like to speak neither for nor against? All right, you have the last word. Thank you. I think we've fed them to you. All right, does the board have any further questions to deliberate? All right, Bob.
I move that we move this on to the city council with our recommendations that we've discussed tonight for them to have their public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. All right, we're ready for agenda item number 2.
Thanks, Cam.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is another public hearing. It's a minor development. It's the application of Revision Energy to construct a 1.75 acre, 160 kilowatt DC solar project. This is Assessor's Map 2, Lot 111A, located on Daylight Drive in the Rural Residential District, RRES. So this application, the applicant submitted right title or interest. They provided a deed and also a solar purchase agreement with the property owner, which is, so Revision is the one who's the applicant here. They submitted the application form for a minor development review, which also includes the conditional use criteria. We have a letter of authorization. We received your check today for for the application fee and a butter notification. We have the narrative addressing the ordinance submissions and plans for the required site elements. So as planning staff, we determined the application was complete and distributed it to the planning board and posted on the city's website. Staff completed the public noticing as outlined in the ordinance, which was direct mailings to abutters within 1,000 feet of the property. We posted two legal ads in the paper, notified city council, the planning board, board of zoning appeals, and interested parties, and we put signage out at the property. So staff recommends that the planning board make a positive motion regarding the applicant staying to apply, application completeness, and sufficient public noticing in order to proceed with a substantive review of the application.
Allison?
I move that we find the application is complete as the applicant has sufficient right, title, and interest to apply and has submitted all necessary materials. Staff has provided the abutter notifications as required by the ordinance.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, thank you.
All right, so I posted the application for this staff review that goes through all the standards and the ordinance that pertain to the project, and also draft findings of fact and conclusions of law, which the board can use as a guide for their decision-making process. You could amend that as you like. So I'll give you a brief overview, and then we can pass it over to the applicant. This particular project, as I said, this is a minor development review, and it's not a conditional use because this is a medium-scale solar project, which is different than a lot of the ones that we have reviewed, which have been a large-scale solar project. So large-scale needs to follow all those additional solar facility standards in our land use ordinance, which would be a decommissioning bond and all that. But since this is a medium scale, it is not subject to those standards. So the use is permitted also. It's not a conditional use out here. So this is a little different than the board typically reviews, because this project size is more to benefit the specific user, Creative Works. So, yeah, you'll see the differences in the staff review anyway. So as I said, there's a power purchase agreement between Revision Energy and the property owner, Creative Works. This is in the Rural Residential District, RRES. On the screen here, I've got an aerial photo that shows where the property is located. It's here in yellow. This is 8 Rod Road here. Here's the interstate. This is the hospital over here. You can see on this map for the aerial, this property is almost 20 acres right here in size. There's a lot of sort of mostly single-family duplex kind of residential in the area, wooded areas, and agricultural land. And then obviously the highway and the hospital over here. So zooming into the property, you can see this is 8 Rod Road, this is Daylight Drive, this is one of the community living arrangements that's on the property, and this is where the other one is. You'll see that in the photos. This aerial is before that was built. But you can see a lot of the property here is wooded out here. There's Dumont Drive over here and Kathy Street, which abut that northern property line. I went out to the property and took some photos. This is on Kathy looking towards the site, so the building is over here. There's a sort of a ridge, like a high point here and through the woods, which is where the solar would be installed, and it would be behind this tree line here. So a lot of these trees here, the buffer yard C requirements would be just maintaining those existing trees that are out here on the property. This is looking into the site. You can kind of see the building right here. So as I said, some of these trees would be cleared in the back for the solar. This is looking down Dumont Drive over towards 8 Rod Road. And then out at Daylight Drive, this is looking to the south. This is looking to the north. And then looking up the driveway into Daylight Drive. So a lot of these trees here, are, well, some of them are neighboring properties, but all these trees going up into the site would be remaining. So you can't see the buildings that are up there right now. Moving up into the site, here's one of the buildings and the other one's over here. So this high point over here is where the solar would be. So tree removal would happen in that area. These are the two buildings, so it's up in here. So really, the entrance would go around the back of the building, and there'd be a little drive up in that area. This is looking into where that drive is. So the drive would be coming off kind of around where the dumpster is located. There's the well that you might have seen on the site plan, so it'd be coming up in here, and then the solar would go up in that area. This looking back towards, sort of towards 8 Rod Road. In the site plan, so this is 8 Rod Road here, Dumont Drive, Kathy, and then this is Daylight Drive here. So there's the two buildings on the site, and this is where the solar would be. So I went through the standards in the ordinance, and it was meeting the standards for lot size, frontage, depth, setbacks. As I said, it's a medium-scale solar project, so all those standards for solar facilities don't necessarily apply for this. There was a waiver requested from the traffic reports, but as we know, there's not, it doesn't generate enough traffic to require a traffic report, so that waiver isn't really necessary. Let's see if there's anything else in particular. Oh, yeah, the proposal is 450 feet from 8 Rod Road and about 80 feet from Dumont Drive. Same thing with the solar, the overhead or underground power. There's no requirement to have it underground for this because it's a medium-scale solar. And I think that's about it. I have one, I believe it was just one proposed two proposed conditions on the approval issuance of the stormwater permit by rule by the Department of Environmental Protection, and also approval by the city engineer of the stormwater management plan. We have the city engineer here, so he can talk about the plan. We received an update for that today. And that's all I have.
I have a question for Betsy. Betsy, on your analysis, the area, you have a section here for area of comment or concern about the project is medium scale, and therefore the special use review standards for solar energy facilities only apply to large scale projects. But there's nothing we can do about that. But you're listing that as a concern, or is it just a comment?
It was just a comment because it's just as I said, it was sort of a weird, it falls in a weird zone the board hasn't encountered before.
I just wanted to be sure it was not a concern.
Oh, no, it's not a concern, yeah. I could have deleted concern, I suppose.
I will also, in your draft approval, there's an area that needs to have a correction.
You found that?
I did. I didn't find anything in the minutes, so I dug. If you know, you know.
Wow, you didn't find it, huh? No, just kidding.
On page 5,
Yes.
section 300-603E5, subsection E, is within the not within.
Is within the not within.
Far down the page.
Sorry. You said E6E?
The little e, the proposal
Yeah.
is within the not within a shoreland overlay district.
Okay. Oh, okay, yeah.
There, that's my contribution for the night.
Does anybody else have questions for Betsy?
Betsy, is this a new development? Is there like 2 properties there, or is it just one?
No, this is one property. So there's 2 buildings on there currently, and then this would be behind those 2 buildings. Is that what you mean, or?
I'm just trying to think, because a gentleman came in front of us, I don't know, a little over a year ago, to put some duplexes on the 8 Rod Road.
Yeah, that's a different lot.
That's a different
Yeah.
lot? Okay, thank you.
I just have a question, Betsy. On the decommissioning, I'm feeling a little bit out of our depth here, looking at the numbers that he provided. Is that something that you handle now? Does that look reasonable? Should we ask Tyler for his interpretation of that? I know we don't have to.
Let's say, yeah, our ordinance doesn't require a decommissioning bond to
Right.
be in place. So it would fall under the typical demolition permitting process with the city. So usually there's a surety that's put in place as the demolition's happening to make sure that the site is cleaned up at the end. And then the applicant would get that money back, once the site has been proven to be cleared. So this would be just like any other structure that's abandoned, and would need to be, removed. So it would just sort of fall in our general process. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
Would you like
Any
me
other
to?
questions, or are we okay to hear from the applicant?
Yep.
Okay, ready for the applicant. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, and thanks, Betsy. You took most of the hard work. My name is Alex with Revision Energy. I'll just kind of acknowledge the change to minor development. Mostly when we met with the pre-application conference with Betsy and staff, the project was slightly bigger, like a matter of tens of kilowatts, which was enough to trigger a more major development and large project. So we left that meeting with that expectation, and then the project shrunk ever so slightly, which Betsy kind of brought it down a level. So you'll note in the application, that's why decommissioning was provided, because at the time of pre-application, we believed that it would be fully applicable, and there's some other standards throughout the application that read like it was still a larger project. So there's maybe more information ultimately than you need. So I apologize if that caused confusion. And then I guess per Betsy, the actual findings of factor specific to it being a minor development, not a major with conditional use as it was initially believed to be. So that's the why you maybe have more in the packet as if it was a larger project. So I'll lead with that. And then just to backtrack more of the project overview, I'll just start with, if you're not familiar, Creative Works is a business that does kind of medical rehabilitation for folks with varying degrees of disabilities and traumatic brain injuries. So they have a couple of different properties in Maine. They partnered with Revision this year for maybe 3 different projects. This one in Lewiston, and one other that somebody else at Revision worked on. Just in an effort, operationally, Creative Works is trying to offset their utility costs to kind of, like a lot of businesses, bring overhead down and reallocate that money to their business. So this is in an effort for that. So like Betsy said, the actual strategy of the project, I know Augusta obviously has other more visible, larger projects in the city that are more on that kind of community solar level, both size and where is the energy going? Often large commercial
folks outside of Augusta or, a couple hundred residential folks. This project is sized specifically where Creative Works is the only benefactor of the power. And that kind of format of the power purchase agreement is a really common tool that's used for nonprofits that essentially can't access the tax incentives of if you're a more standard commercial project. So they partner with a group like Revision where they won't technically own the project for the first 5 years. They'll be buying the power from the project. And there's no lease or anything. It's all kind of baked into that agreement. And then usually around year 5, what we call the off-taker, in this case, Creative Works, will often buy the project outright. So they take ownership at a value that's depreciated. So that's kind of the background. It's not a site lease. They are the landowner and the power user on site. So that's why it's only sized to their need. I also just was going to kind of cover a couple key differences between like what does this project look like versus some of the other projects that you've seen. So obviously, I think the first one is what's the scale of the project. It's sometimes a little hard, two-dimensional, zoomed out on an aerial. Betsy can correct me. I think the majority of your other large projects in the city are like between 2 and 5 megawatts AC, so like 10 to 20 acre projects. This one is 160 DC, 115 AC kilowatts, not megawatts. So we're on a scale of like 1 to 5% of the scale of projects that you've seen. So this is not a large solar farm. Similar projects, other planning departments in other cities have said, like, if those are solar farms, this is a solar garden. It's not necessarily apples to apples in the scale of that. So in terms of like the equipment on site, the modules and racking will look similar. It's a fixed tilt system. There's no trackers. But in terms of like some of the larger medium voltage gear that you'll see on larger projects, so large pad-mounted transformers, the familiar line of 4 poles with disconnects and air brake switches and meters isn't necessary on this project. At its scale, it's essentially just interconnecting to the existing single phase that brings the residential service to these homes. There's no 3-phase upgrade. There's no pad-mounted transformer. It'll interconnect at a single pole-mounted transformer on a new pole on the property at the corner of the paved area. So there's no new utility infrastructure off-site, and you don't have that kind of higher voltage equipment. It essentially interconnects like a residential system would on single-phase power on site, which eliminates the need for larger equipment pads, those larger transformers, combiners, switchboards. None of that's necessary. Instead, the couple of inverters are essentially mounted to a little rack that's kind of just tucked under one of the rows of the array, as opposed to like separate larger pads, which you would have seen on some of your larger projects. Otherwise, still uses agricultural style fence like a newer system would use, as recommended by kind of IFW and DEP. And I think the one other thing I was just going to note, which you can kind of make out the line work on this aerial. We had talked with Betsy and staff about just where we were ultimately going to locate this system on what's a fairly large parcel. And it landed really where it is, largely because of a wetland, stream, and vernal pool complex that kind of cut in a cross-cutting shape through the lower middle of the property. Our starting point with Creative Works was, let's see, how far into the woods we can keep this project. And then once we learned stream, wetlands, vernal pool, our kind of key strategy was avoidance, not impact. So it started moving up the hill. And then you can kind of tell from Betsy's photos, we're up kind of on the higher plateau of the ridge where their 2 structures are. And then that whole wooded band down towards the wetlands and streams is, some areas are in excess of like 30% slopes, which are just not buildable. So the project moved into that area based on the natural resources and a slope analysis for what the racking system can safely be installed on. I think the one other note I was going to make, and maybe Betsy was going to cover, one of her conditions related to the stormwater report that Tyler had caught, I think was resolved by the civil engineer SME maybe the day after the findings were drawn up, but Tyler can let us know if there was any open questions between, I guess, largely him and the civil engineer for that model. But otherwise, I'm happy to let you all ask any questions that you had.
Thank you. Yes, Kathy, go ahead.
So do the residences actually disconnect from CMP? This is going to provide 100% of their power?
I think that it will, so it's the system started as large as its single phase system can interconnect without upgrading, which they could use just about all of. We had to go a little bit smaller because of the slopes and the wetlands. That's why the project became smaller. So they'll use everything that the system is outputting. I think it'll be a little bit less than 100% because we had to eliminate some of the system size
So they'll
based
still
on the
be
site.
connected to CMP?
Yep, yeah. So it'll offset a significant amount of their bill, kind of as much as we could build for them at this property. Yeah.
On a couple of things, it goes without saying though, and I'm sure you understand the factor, if this project was to be expanded anytime, like any day, within 5 years, they get through all this stuff and they want to make it bigger and generate, it must come back before the planning board.
Yep.
If it grows by any percentage. The fencing, I see on here you got agricultural fencing. What's the opening at the bottom for the animals to come and go?
I think Betsy said that we would be required to elevate it by at least 6 inches, maybe more. We can kind of set it.
Because I couldn't see it on the plans where they actually showed it was going to be up to do that, so.
Yeah, I think that if the board has a preference for elevating the fence, every city is a little bit different. And I don't know that your ordinance has a specific, it's usually like what's IFW asking for, then we can put that into the construction set to make sure the fence is raised what you're comfortable with. Usually we use, I think the detail on the set is like 8-inch openings in the fence, but then
Yeah.
if you, raised further for a fully continuous gap, sometimes that's a request that's made, but usually I think the openings are about 8 inches at the bottom.
Okay, also, and the last thing, in the report, that there is bats in the area, in the wood areas and stuff.
Yep.
So there's certain times of the year you cannot do construction
Yep.
up there.
So specific to this project, and Betsy and I worked through this question, the letter from the IFW that was initially proposed. So when the project area initially is screened with IFW, and you would have probably seen the letter, kind of give a polygon to say, a project in this area is in planning. Can you give us an opinion how it might affect? And the language that they provide back in that initial letter is may impact bats, reach out for
Right.
more information. So Betsy had also flagged that for this project specifically, now that we have, this clearing limit in this location, is that clearing restriction for like a bat window applicable? So I reached back out to IFW with the specific plans,
Okay.
asking them, would that clearing limit be applicable to this use at this location? And they said for this project size, they wouldn't anticipate an issue and wouldn't need that clearing window. So we kind of closed the loop on them with them. And I think Betsy has those emails with IFW.
Thank you.
And I will say the IF&W letter says 7 inches off the ground for the fencing, so if you wanted to add that as a condition, you could.
Okay.
So one of our projects recently, we had a discussion about deer jumping over the fence and a need to have some berms inside the fence so they can jump back out. Have you experienced that problem with any of your projects?
I think it's more of something that we've seen asked, and I don't know that we've implemented, but we've been asked about it on larger projects. Generally, when a project is in a discrete area, so if a deer was to get in, because of the maintenance schedule of the project, it could go months without a human ever going and actually looking. On these kind of smaller projects that are co-located with an existing use, generally because there's people on the site 24/7, the the sentiment has been, one, there's maybe less deer immediately in that area, and two, if there is a deer within a fence, somebody is going to see it within a working day, where the gates can be opened and kind of help the deer out. So
Who would open the gate?
somebody on the facility who has access to the project, or
So
like,
someone will be able,
yeah,
from the residents.
either somebody at the biggest, I think, question that we've seen is like, how do you know a deer is in there? Because on the larger projects, they're just not monitored. Nobody's going and looking at it on a daily basis. Whereas Creative Works has full-time employees on site every single day. And so similar to like, we do a lot of, call it small commercial projects adjacent to the owner of that project, car dealership or medical building, whoever. The helper there is there's physically people on site every day who you can cut down there's a deer in the project. You can realize that business day, not 2 months later when somebody, the next time they're there for general service.
Thank
So
you.
I hope that helps.
Any other questions for the applicant before we open it up to public hearing? Okay, you'll have the last word.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak in favor of the project? Anybody who would like to speak against? And anybody to speak neither for nor against? All right, you have the last word.
No further words, just thanks for the consideration.
Thank you. All right. So let's hear it from the board. Kevin?
I have no concerns with the project. It seems small enough that it shouldn't have a huge impact, so.
Thank you. Harold?
Yeah, you did a real good job speaking to us tonight. You good detail about that. I have no issues.
Thank you.
All my questions have been answered.
Thank you, Bob.
No problem, all my questions have been answered.
Thank you, Allison.
No problem.
Nate?
My only question is with Tyler, if with the updated DEP,
Tyler?
Come on up here, Tyler.
come on up.
Sorry, I was looking at one of the plans for this. What was the question?
The updated plans that came through for the stormwater,
Yep.
is that all good now that it's been updated?
Yep, I'm good with it.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
You're
In that
welcome.
case, I'm good with it.
All right, just need a motion. Sure, thank you, Allison.
In the matter of Revision Energy, Inc., Creative Works Solar Project, the findings of fact, the request is for a minor development review as per section 300-405 and 300-603.e. The applicant proposes to construct a 160 kilowatt DC, parentheses, 115.2 kilowatt AC, and parentheses, ground-mounted solar array, disturbing 0.75 of an acre to provide energy to the property owner through a solar power purchase agreement. I'm sorry about the humming. I'm not sure why that's doing that. Can you hear that?
I can't hear it.
I've got awful feedback. The project is located at Daylight Drive in the Rural Residential District, RRES, and can be found on Tax Map 2, Lot 111A. The existing and proposed land use, community living arrangements, is a permitted use in this district, as is the proposed medium-scale ground-mounted solar energy system. Based on the information before the planning board, including both the remaining findings of fact as well as the conclusions of law detailed in the staff review, applicant's submittals and testimony, and all other related materials contained in the record, I move to approve this application with no additional findings. The following conditions shall be met prior to the issuance of a permit from the Code Enforcement Bureau in order to satisfy land use ordinance criteria and planning board requirements. All right. One, issuance of a stormwater permit by rule by the Department of Environmental Protection for Section 300-404B17. 2, approval by the city engineer of the stormwater management plan per 300-404B17. Number 3, the agricultural fencing shall be installed, leaving a 7-inch space below the fencing. The project shall commence within 2 years of this approval and shall be substantially completed within 5 years of the date of the planning board decision unless a permit extension has been granted by the board. Deviation from this approval is subject to code enforcement action and potential legal proceedings per section 300-601 of the land use ordinance.
Bob?
Question, do we need number 2, seeing how the city engineer already approved the stormwater management plan?
What do you suggest, Betsy?
Good.
I mean, does it hurt to leave it, or?
It doesn't, it doesn't matter either way. I mean, you could remove it if you want, because he said he's okay with it.
Right.
With it, but.
What's the preference? My inclination is.
Let's just leave it.
I was going to say,
Okay.
my inclination is to leave
I
it for the
second the
record.
motion.
Thank you, Bob. All in favor?
Do we have discussion first?
Sure.
Sorry. Do we want an additional finding there to explain why we didn't ask for the berms on the inside of the fencing? Because we've required it for another project, because of the availability of staff from the residents.
Or is
that-
it understood that the size of this project is not comparable to the other projects?
It's not the size, it's the availability of people there to see an animal that's trapped inside and being able to go let them out.
I think he said.
It's just
they
a
were gonna-
finding.
I think he said that they were going to have someone there daily.
I understand, that's my point. On another project, we required them to build berms on the inside, and we're not requiring that of them. So I'm just wondering if a finding would say, because of the availability of employees and the residences, there's no need for a berm inside, just to differentiate it for someone else who might be coming in with a project as to why we didn't require that on this case.
Betsy, what do you think?
I mean, I guess it's up to you. If you want to add it, it will be reflected in the minutes, so.
If it's in the minutes, that's fine.
Just leave it in
I'm
the-
good with that.
You're okay with it in the minutes
Yep.
then? Okay. Then I think we're good.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
And thanks, Betsy and the planning team. Thanks a lot.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eva Nielsen. I'm the Assistant City Planner. So the third item on our agenda tonight is a public hearing for an amended minor development application of Decal Gymnastics, Inc. to remove parking lot pavement from the previously approved project. This is Assessor's Map 2, Lot 16, located at 994 Riverside Drive in the Plan Development 2 District, or PD2. The applicant has provided right title or interest in the form of a deed, and as staff, we did receive a new deed for the merged lots. The applicant submitted an application for an amended minor development and conditional use review and supporting materials, including a narrative, the amended site plan, letter of authorization, and fee payments for the application, the public notice, and the abutter notification. Staff completed direct mailings to abutters within the required notification radius of 1,000 feet. We posted legal ads in the newspaper. We notified City Council, the Planning Board, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and other interested parties, and we installed one sign on the property. So based on this review, Augusta City Planning staff recommends that the Planning Board make a positive motion regarding the applicant's standing to apply, the completeness of the application, and the sufficiency of public noticing in order to proceed with the substantive review.
Does anyone feel comfortable? Okay.
Just getting my ducks in a row. I move that we determine that the application is complete. The applicant has sufficient standing to apply to the planning board for amended minor development conditional use review for the above described project. The Planning Bureau provided public notices outlined in the land use ordinance and collected the required application, public notice fees for the project.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you.
So planning staff, we've completed a staff review. Engineering staff have provided a review as well, and we've created a draft findings of fact and conclusions of law document for this review, which we've shared with the applicant with the planning board, and we've posted this on the website. So for this application, the applicant proposes to amend the design of the 2025 approved plan to build a 4,220 square foot building addition with associated parking and stormwater improvements. So the amendments include substituting gravel for pavement, adding signage to facilitate access and site movement and safety, removing the curbing, sidewalk pavement, and the plunge pool. The impervious would be increasing 505 square feet from 19,610 to 20,115 square feet, and all other elements of the plan would remain. So previously, the planning board approved a special exemption request for the construction of this facility in 1985, followed by a conditional use request to expand the facility in 1992. Then, of course, the most recent approval for the addition in 2025, which we're reopening tonight for the amended review. So I'll move through the slides. This is a satellite image of the property. You can see the lot, which was previously 2 lots, has been merged to comply with the setback standards. And like I said, the staff has received that deed. You can also see the residential lots to the south and the east on Riverside Drive, the Hershey facility kind of to the southeast. And then there's First Student and the gravel pit to the north and the west, and other residences and businesses in the vicinity. Moving on to the photos, this is an image of the main building. You can see the parking area and the gravel walkway, which pedestrians can access to walk from the shared parking at First Student to Decal during the busy times or the meets. The next photo, this is an image showing the original building in the yellow color and the addition in the gray color, taken from that southern access. This was just before some landscaping was added. And then this is right after the landscaping was added in that location. So you can see a couple of catch basins over here on the right side, which may now be underutilized due to the removal of the pavement and the curving. So staff added a flexible condition in the draft decision letter allowing the catch basins to be covered so that the owner doesn't incur any unnecessary expenses for their use if they apply. Now some photos just for context. Standing at the northern access, looking north on Riverside Drive, you can see First Student is over here. Looking the other direction, looking more south on Riverside Drive, from that same entrance, you can see there's an enter-only sign, which may be a little bit more effective if it was double-sided. So we did add that as a draft condition of approval. The same goes for the signage at the southern exit. The applicant did add this to the most recent iteration of the plan, which you all received. Also, I'll note this paved area over here, kind of near that porta potty, which the city engineer, Tyler Pease, recommends to remove as it is in the right of way. This was eliminated from the new plan we received as well. Okay. This is from that southern exit area where the double-sided sign condition would apply as well. We're looking kind of northeast from that exit with the addition and the main building included. Just to show you some development of the site, we have the detention pond and the riprap ditch to the rear of the property facing west from the southern parking area. We have some plantings to the rear of the addition in the foreground, and then landscaping between Decal and the southern abutter in the background. We're looking southeast from that rear parking area now. Now we're looking at a different angle of that landscaping facing southwest near the southern exit. So in 2025, the planning board granted a waiver from the buffer yard C requirements here due to the limited space and glare being directed more toward the building rather than the southern abutters property. And then just looking kind of back toward First Student and that main building, facing northeast. From the rear of the building, you can see that dumpster enclosure has been installed. So here we have the site plan. The main building is in brown, and the addition is in that yellow color. The new impervious area is in that more orange color. So I'll note that the construction agreement with a neighbor was established. Documentation was submitted to city staff. Also, the planning board previously granted a parking waiver allowing 72 spaces on site with access to overflow parking north at First Student. And then lastly, I just included the originally approved plan for the addition if the board has any questions about what was approved previously. Since we've covered the waivers, I'll just briefly go over the draft conditions of approval and note where a few were satisfied already. So the first condition is regarding the lot merge, which has taken place. So this has been satisfied. Number 2, all non-conforming existing exterior lighting shall be updated to full cutoff fixtures. Number 3, design and construction of work within the Riverside Drive right-of-way shall be approved by the city engineer. Number 4 is regarding the construction agreement, which has been satisfied. Number 5, the applicant shall add 1 exterior light fixture to the west side of the building addition. Number 6, the applicant shall replace the existing one-sided signage located at each entrance reading enter only, and it should be do not enter. I made this correction in the digital version with the two-sided signage. Number 7, the applicant shall either remove or barricade the area of pavement in the right-of-way of Riverside Drive. Number 8, the planning board grants flexibility regarding covers on the 2 catch basins along the southeastern parking area. This is subject to approval by the city engineer. And then number 9, so just to preface this condition, the applicant expressed that it was a possibility that they may want to pave the parking lot in the future, just not at the moment. So since the site infrastructure is mostly in place to facilitate the pavement, we added a condition that the planning board can discuss if they would like to, and that is number 9, should the applicant choose to pave the parking lot in the future, additional planning board approval is not required, subject to the city engineer's review. So these are our suggestions, they're draft conditions, which the board can discuss, and that's all from the staff side.
Any questions for Eva? Yes.
I have one question on number 9. If the applicant chooses to pave this in the future, would Tyler's approval also address the striping for the parking spaces?
I guess we didn't explicitly call that out.
Right, I mean, I guess the thought was it would basically be what, kind of almost like reverting back to the original plan with the paving and the striping, but I guess we can talk with Tyler or the applicant about, yeah.
Any other questions at this moment for Eva? Okay, we can hear it from the applicant.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, Jim Coffin Engineering. I'm here tonight because my client has pretty much run out of funds to complete the project, and the paving is the big ticket item that they're going to eliminate. They want to do it down the road once they have the money for that. One side issue that came up, the husband of the applicant buried a bunch of stumps inside the building. So when they were in the construction phase, they got charged a lot extra to get rid of all those stumps, haul them off site. and bring in new soil. So that added a lot of money to the project. Basically, everything Eva said, we will stripe it if we do decide to pave it down the road and put the appropriate signage there that's needed, the striping, the arrows, and everything we showed on the original plan. But I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions for Jim? All right, well, you'll have the last word. Thank you. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak for the project? Against the project? Or neither for nor against? Thank you. Jim? All right. Nate?
I'm good with the project.
Allison?
I have no problem. I just do need a little bit of clarification from Eva, if I could.
Sure.
Eva, on number 6, condition, you mentioned some different words. Where did those words go? Enter only, exit only, and then do not enter on the back of both?
So, I had tried to incorporate the signage as it reads now. It should be do not enter.
Instead of
Exit.
exit?
Instead of
Yeah.
exit.
And you can see on the site plan, I think the double-sided sign with exit only and do not enter. So if you want to include that language.
So we have enter only, exit only, and do not enter on the back of the exit only sign. Let me find that.
So it's on the front of, like, facing.
Okay.
Speak into the mic.
Speaking to your mic, they're flashing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, looking too closely at the site plan. So, exit only is facing Riverside Drive.
I'll let someone else that.
No, do not enter is facing Riverside Drive. And exit only would be facing those leaving the site. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay. Bob?
I'm good. It's a good project.
Kathy?
I have another question for Eva. On number 4, you've proposed that we delete all the language and leave in section 300-603E6.
No, I guess I was just adding that because it hadn't been there in the future. So it could be struck through. All of it could be.
Good, Kathy?
Yes.
Harold?
I'm fine.
Kevin?
I'm good with it.
All right. Is there a motion?
She's got the language.
Go ahead.
Pardon?
I'm still confused. Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, I'll give it a try, and we need to amend it, that's good. In the matter of decal gymnastics building addition and amended minor development and conditional use review, findings of fact and conclusions of law, the applicant proposes modifications to an approved 4,220 square foot building addition and associated parking and stormwater improvements. The proposed amendments include substituting gravel for pavement across the parking area, adding signage and removing curbing, sidewalk pavement, and a plunge pool. These changes result in an increase in impervious surface from 19,610 square feet to 20,115 square feet, an increase of 505 square feet. All of the elements of the approved plan remain unchanged, and only standards relevant to the proposed changes are included within this review. The applicant is Decal Gymnastics, Inc. Right title and interest is in the Kennebec County Registry of Deeds, Book 15442, page 156. The owner is Decal Gymnastics, Inc. The location is 994 Riverside Drive. The zoning is Planned Development 2 District, Tax Map 2, Lot 16. The existing land use and the proposed land use are the same. The acreage is 1.61 acres. This project was originally approved by the Planning Board as a minor development conditional use request for an expansion of the existing gymnastics facility, including 19,610 feet of new impervious and associated stormwater improvements. I agree with the findings of fact and conclusions of laws prepared by the staff. And therefore, I recommend that the planning board approve the application of Decal Gymnastics, Inc., care of Delaney Scher, as described in the findings of fact and conclusions of law above, with the following additional findings. The applicant requests a parking waiver as design capacity is 299, which requires 85 parking spaces under the ordinance. The site provides 72 on-site spaces and therefore does not meet ordinance standards. However, since overflow parking is available to the north at First Student during weekend meets when parking demand is high, expected to be the highest, the planning board grants the waiver. Due to limited space outside the right-of-way, headlight glare being directed toward the building, and the preference for on-site vehicle circulation over access to Riverside Drive, planning board grants a waiver from buffer yard C requirements along the easterly property line. The following conditions shall be met prior to the issuance of a permit from the Code Enforcement Bureau in order to satisfy land use ordinance criteria and planning board requirements. Do I need to address the ones that are deleted or just renumber the new ones? Okay, number 1 would be all non-conforming existing exterior lighting shall be updated to full cutoff fixtures per section 300-603E, subsection C, subsection D. 2, design and construction of work within the Riverside Drive right-of-way shall be approved by the city engineer per section 300-603 point E, subsection 3. 3, the applicant shall add 1 exterior light fixture to the west side of the building addition per section 300-603E, subsection 6, sub D. I think we're at 4. The applicant shall replace the existing one-sided signage located at each entrance reading "Enter only" and "Do not enter" with 2-sided signage. Did I read that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Per section 300-603E, sub 3A. 5, the applicant shall either remove or barricade the area of pavement in the right-of-way of Riverside Drive per section 300-603E3 sub C. 6, the planning board grants flexibility to the applicant regarding covers on the 2 catch basins along the southeastern parking area. This is subject to approval by the city engineer per section 300-603E sub 4D. 7, I think. Should the applicant choose to pave the parking area in the future, additional planning board approval is not required, subject to the city engineer's review of the original parking lot proposal and shall include approval of striping. Per section 300-603.E sub 4D, the project shall commence within 2 years of this approval, shall be substantially completed within 5 years of the date of the planning board decision unless a permit extension has been granted by the board. Deviation from this approval is subject to code enforcement action and potential legal proceedings per section 300-601 of the land use ordinance.
Great. Thank you. All in favor? All right, very good. Thank you.
Wasn't sure I had
And
all my ducks
next.
lined up.
Quack, quack.
The 4th item on the agenda is a public hearing for a conditional use application of Sky LLC, Annalee Morris Pauley, to convert the first floor of the building to a counseling center and a medical clinic. This is Assessor's Map 33 Lot 179, located at 56 Winthrop Street in the Institute Business Professional Subdistrict, or BP. The applicant provided right title or interest in the form of a purchase and sale agreement with Seller Pacquiam Associates LLC. The applicant submitted a conditional use application form, letter of authorization, narrative, purchase and sale agreement, the site plan, additional responses, and the application fees for the public notice and for the abutter notification. We, as the planning staff, also completed direct mailings to abutters within the radius of 500 feet, which is required. We posted legal ads in the newspaper. We notified council, the planning board, Board of Zoning Appeals, and others, and we installed one sign on the property. So based on this, Augusta planning staff, we recommend that the planning board make a positive motion regarding the completeness of the application, the applicant's standing to apply, and the sufficiency of our public noticing to move ahead with the more substantive review.
Allison? Oh,
Did
Bob?
you want to go?
Sure.
The city planner has reviewed the submitted materials for the conditional use review and determined the applicant to be complete. I move we accept them.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you.
So again, planning staff have completed a staff review. We received an engineering bureau review, and we've created a draft findings and fact and conclusions of law document, which we've shared with you all and the applicant and posted on the city website. The applicant proposes a medical clinic for substance use treatment on the first floor of the building, which is a conditional use. At most, 5 staff would be on site at the medical clinic, including 2 medical practitioners. Hours would be set from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays. Clients would visit either for individual or group appointments with a max of 10 clients on site at one time. And the second floor of the building would accommodate a supportive community living arrangement, which would include 8 beds, and it doesn't require planning board approval. Currently, the first floor is vacant, and the second floor is considered under the use 1 and 2 family dwellings, which is permitted. Going through the slides that we have a satellite image of the site and the surrounding neighborhood. We're looking at the property in that orange outline there, and the property is within the Winthrop Street Historic District, so it's subject to Historic Preservation Commission review for any applicable changes to the building and the site. The area includes a mix of government offices and services courts, correctional institutions, residential, business and professional offices, and other uses. So going through some photos now, we have a photo of the building. It's known as the Caroline Belcher House, built circa 1848 through 1851. It's a contributing building within the Winthrop Street Historic District, and we're facing southwest on Winthrop Street here from that westernmost driveway. You'll see there is a sign bracket here, which is proposed to be removed. The new sign is proposed to be affixed to that front porch area. I'll also just make note that all of the lot characteristics are met except for the minimum setback, but this building is grandfathered and no related changes are proposed. So just for some context, looking west up the hill on Winthrop Street, and then kind of looking across the street down Pleasant Street, you can see some the library, some residences and professional offices and other uses in the area. Now, just looking toward the signalized intersection of Winthrop and State Streets, this is facing east. We have a look at the parking area at the site facing northwest, and you can see the locations of both driveways there. This is a little closer into the building, facing west from the parking area. So there would be a painted accessible space kind of in front of the stairway and garage, and then a drop-off space to the right of that, which would be painted, and then the existing light fixtures, which are not full cutoff, are proposed to be replaced with full cutoff fixtures to comply with our ordinance. A trash container would be placed to the left or the south of the existing garage. This is a photo of the southern property line and parking area. You can see that there is some horsetail that is more perennial. It wouldn't provide screening through the fall and winter months, so we've added buffer yard A or an enhanced buffer yard A. within the draft conditions of approval, and I can elaborate more on the landscaping piece in a little bit. And the dumpster here would be removed from the site. This is the easterly property line. You can see the abutter Assistance Plus, who recently came to the planning board for a similar review. Vegetation also that is on the abutter's property. There is that eastern access there, so the city engineer recommends to discontinue this driveway access since the width doesn't meet our standards and there could be traffic conflicts with the abutter. The condition could be met with something as simple as a planter blocking the entrance, but the applicant and their consultant can work this out with Tyler and the engineering bureau pending an approval. So here is the site plan. So Winthrop Street is right here. You can see the eastern driveway, which Tyler recommends to discontinue, and 9 parking spaces are included on the plan. Staff have determined that actually 11 spaces are needed, 10 for the medical clinic and 1 for the residential use. So if the driveway to the east would be discontinued, this would make room for 2 additional parking spaces, which would meet the requirement without a waiver necessarily. So lastly, we have a floor plan of the first floor. So just regarding the landscaping, this is an item for the planning board's discussion and consideration, determination. The ordinance requires buffer yard A landscaping to screen parking areas containing 6 or more vehicles. However, under section 300-502C subsection 2 subsection B, the planning board has flexibility and is able to relax this requirement based on the site conditions and the overall visual impact of what is proposed. So in this case, there is limited space for plantings along that easterly property line, although the parking area could be modified to accommodate the buffer. So the planning board could require buffer yard A landscaping along the easterly and northerly and southerly property lines with these modifications. Or an alternative option, the planning board could use its flexibility to relax the requirement and not include that additional plantings to meet the buffer yard A requirements on those easterly and northerly property lines. If the board does choose the relaxed sort of option, staff recommends requiring additional landscaping elsewhere on the site, such as along the southerly property line to offset the reduction and enhance the overall screening of the site. And another note, there may be some medical waste from the contents of a sharps container if staff happen to find any medical waste on the property, and in turn, staff would transport the medical waste to a licensed facility, but no other medical waste is proposed. The medical practitioners wouldn't be administering injections on site. I'll just go through the draft conditions, finding and conditions of approval. And we had included the landscaping options in italics for the planning board to use to assist decision-making. So the first and the only finding, an option for the planning board, number 1, the planning board finds that the buffer yard A landscaping is required to screen parking areas containing 6 or more vehicles. However, based on existing site conditions and overall aesthetic impact, the board will exercise its flexibility pursuant to section 300-502C subsection 2 subsection B to waive this requirement along the northerly and easterly property lines. Additional plantings along the southerly property line are noted in the corresponding condition of approval. So I'll read that corresponding condition of approval first. So it's number 2B, the applicant shall comply with buffer yard A landscaping requirements by installing buffer yard A landscaping along the southerly property line with enhanced buffer yard A evergreen plantings exceeding minimum ordinance standards. The applicant will submit an amended site plan showing the proposed modifications and landscaping for administrative review and approval. So then the less relaxed landscaping option listed as an alternative condition, the applicant shall comply with buffer yard A landscaping requirements by installing buffer yard A landscaping along the northerly, easterly, and southerly property lines in full compliance with ordinance requirements and submitting a landscaping plan to city staff for review and approval. And then beyond all of the landscaping, the other draft conditions of approval, number 1, the applicant must obtain approval for any site and building improvements, if applicable, from the Historic Preservation Commission. And number 3, the eastern driveway must be discontinued. The applicant shall submit a plan showing how the access will be modified for review and approval by city staff. So that is all for me. If there are any questions.
Any questions for Eva? Yes?
So on proposed condition number 3, with regard to discontinuing the eastern driveway, since they need extra parking spaces, should we indicate that as part of that? You said it would accommodate 2 more parking
Yeah.
spaces.
I guess-
If the requirement is 11 and they have 9.
It wouldn't necessarily cause harm if we added a detail to that condition of approval.
Any other questions for Eva? All right. Oh,
I do have one. On the second option for the buffer yard planting, your recommendation, one of your recommendations is that those plantings would exceed the minimum ordinance standards? So I'm still a little confused, because it talks about the applicant shall submit an amended site plan showing the proposed parking lot modifications. Is that in relation to the discontinuance of one of the entrances? I'm trying to tie these together.
Yeah, this is speaking solely to that buffer yard A standard. So that standard would apply to the easterly property line, northerly, and the southerly. But as the site is right now, there's not really space on the applicant's property to install the buffer yard A on the northerly or the easterly. So the planning board can say, can use its flexibility to say, we don't require buffer yard A on those 2 property lines where it is difficult or impossible to meet that standard as it is now. So as staff, if the planning board uses its flexibility to do that and not require the full requirement or the full plantings for buffer yard A, we would recommend that additional plantings and evergreen specifically would be used elsewhere on that southerly property line where it is possible.
That's just to make up for not doing those other 2 sites?
Right.
Okay, I think I finally
Any
get
other
it.
questions for Eva? Yep, Harold.
Is there going to be any changes to the upstairs of that building? Because I'm looking at the blueprint here, and it's only showing changes for downstairs.
Yeah, so the second floor is proposed to be a community living arrangement, so that doesn't require planning board review and approval. We're just looking at the first floor, which is a conditional use as a medical clinic. So the second floor plan wouldn't be relevant to our review tonight.
Yes, Kathy.
That brings me to a question I'd forgotten about, and that's access to the second floor through the clinic. It looks like on the floor plan, there's stairs going up. You come up the ramp, you enter through, looks like it's a fire-rated door, and then you go upstairs. Is that inner door the entry that would be locked going into the clinic so that people going upstairs can't get into the clinic during off hours?
I guess we could ask the applicant that question.
Okay.
Any other questions for Eva? And if not, we'll listen to the applicant. Sure. Come on up.
Good evening, members of the planning board. My name is Annalee Morris Polly, and I am co-owner of Sky LLC, doing this project. And so the bottom half, what we're talking about here, the counseling center, the medical clinic piece of it, is going to be leased out for a long-term lease to Angles Behavioral Health Services, which has been doing business in Augusta for about 12 years now. We have a site on Riverside Drive, which is quite a ways out. And so with the population that we serve, some of them have difficulty in getting to us. And so this site is kind of a satellite site for those that are mostly on foot or on bicycles that are currently either walking or riding out to our site on Riverside. And so it is going to be a small site, which is why we propose that there is just 2 clinicians on site, one of them being a therapist full-time and one of them being a prescriber a couple of days a week. Our intention is not to do any medical procedures as in long-acting injections there. Those individuals would be brought to the Augusta location on Riverside Drive. We would have care coordinators on site on a regular basis. We do often work with individuals at the library. So it's a really great location because we would be able to redirect those individuals over to a more private, confidential space for treatment and have conversations with them there that are more appropriate. And so the upstairs will be utilized by Sky, which is a community living arrangement provider. And there are, we have 2 other sites in Maine, one in Skowhegan and one in Augusta. And I know that's not part of this, but the idea is that the entities kind of work together to some degree to support those that need a little bit higher level, such as housing as well. So I know there's some questions about the actual site downstairs, and so I have Mr. Murray here with me, who has done the engineering piece of it, so he can answer some of those questions. But I think we've done a pretty good job, so I'll turn it over to him.
Okay, thank you. Ben Murray from AE Hudson. To answer your first question, yes, that door would be locked going into the med clinic area for the space for the upstairs. That's a new door that we're putting in for that reason. So we reviewed the conditions that are being proposed, and we are in agreement with removal of the east driveway. We will gain, like you said, 2 more spaces for parking to meet the requirements. As Eva said, the north and east line are really tight. Doesn't give us an allowance for any vegetation along that on our property line. You do have the fairly large vegetated area on the north side that's within the right-of-way, which is good. It shields the building quite nicely, as is. And there is vegetation on the east property line with the abutter. That is a good buffer as well. The south line is mixture of not evergreens, seasonal type vegetation. So we do agree of adding a vegetated buffer along that line. We can definitely discuss that further, but we can meet the buffer area requirements for sure. Something that's evergreen, so to provide coverage for that line and for our parking lot lights. Along with those improvements and the removal of the dumpster pad, the dumpster enclosure, I think we made some very good improvements to the site, along with correcting the sign. The sign bracket that was in the right-of-way that we're also proposing. So entertaining any more further questions that you have on the site?
Anybody have any questions? Harold, yep.
The one entrance and exit that you're going to have, is that adequate for 2 vehicles, the width of that?
It is, and Tyler confirmed that in his letter.
Okay. I did take care of that property years ago when there was a doctor in there, and I know that easterly line is, you can't put anything there. The land, the butter, and you are right there, so.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, you will have the last word, and we'll hear it from the public. Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak for the project? Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak against the project? And is there anybody who would like to speak neither for nor against? Thank you. You have the last word? Okay, thank you. Yep. Okay. All right, Allison.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the buffer yard. I assume that everyone is comfortable making the substitution.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I have no problem.
Okay, thank you. Kevin.
I'm good with the project.
Okay, thank you. Nate.
I'm good with the project.
Thank you. Bob.
Good with the project?
Harold.
With that south vegetation there, is there a certain height of the plants that are going to be planted there? I mean, if we start off with a 3-foot evergreen, or is it a 6-foot evergreen?
So under our buffer yard standards, we have buffer yard A, and with 15, so per 100 feet, with 15 feet, evergreen trees are 2. And then it has a breakdown with other types of trees and shrubs.
Thank you. Is that good, Harold?
What was the 15 feet? The spread
It's the
apart?
width per 100 feet.
Okay, but there is no limit on the height of the shrub that's going to be put there in the beginning? I know they're going to grow, but,
No.
okay, thank you.
I'd say, I mean, there is a minimum height that needs to be planted, or a size or height, there are minimums for an initial planting, but the type of plant, I guess, staff would be able to review to see if it seems,
Like it meets the standards?
yeah, if it's something like, you don't want a redwood there, it's too big.
Well,
They don't grow here, but, for example.
All right, Kathy.
I really like this project. I love
Okay.
the location.
Okay, I need a motion.
Make a motion. Findings of fact and, excuse me, I jumped right ahead in the wrong spot. Pursuant to the provisions of the City of Augusta Land Use Ordinance, the City of Augusta Planning Board has considered the application of Sky LLC, Annalee Morris Polly, including supportive data, staff review comments, public hearing testimony, and related materials contained in the record. The Planning Board makes the following findings of fact and conclusions of law. The request is for a conditional use review as per section 300-603.e. The applicant proposes a substance abuse medical clinic on the first floor and a supportive community living arrangement on the second floor. Site improvements proposed include full cutoff lighting, signage, a trash enclosure, and appropriate pavement markings. At a maximum, 5 employees will access the site, including 2 medical practitioners. Clients, with 10 maximum on site at any one time, will visit via individual or group appointments. Business hours will be Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The project is located at 56 Winthrop Street in the Institutional Business Professional Zone, BP, and within the Winthrop Street Historic District Overlay. It can be found on Tax Map 33, Lot 179. The property's existing residential use is proposed to change to community living arrangement, a permitted use, and a medical clinic, a conditional use in this zone. Based on the information before the planning board, including the findings of fact and conclusions of law detailed in the staff review, applicant submittals, and testimony, and all other related materials contained in the record, I move to approve this request.
Anyone? Bob? Thank
Oh,
you.
hold on,
Sorry.
I've got some
More to say?
more to say, yeah, sorry. With these additional findings. 1, the planning board finds that buffer yard A landscaping is required to screen parking areas containing 6 or more vehicles. However, based on existing site conditions and overall aesthetic impact, the board will exercise its flexibility pursuant to 300-502C subsection 2 subsection B to waive this requirement along the northerly and easterly property lines. Additional plantings along the southerly property line are noted in the corresponding condition of approval. The following conditions shall be met prior to the issuance of a permit from the Code Enforcement Bureau in order to satisfy land use ordinance criteria and planning board requirements. 1, the applicant must obtain approval for any site and building improvements, if applicable, from the Historic Preservation Commission, 300-603E, subsection 5E, subsection 6. The applicant shall comply with Buffer Yard A landscaping requirements by installing Buffer Yard A landscaping along the southerly property line with enhanced Buffer Yard A evergreen plantings exceeding minimum ordinance standards. The applicant will submit an amended site plan showing the proposed parking lot modifications and landscaping for administrative review and approval. 300-502C2B and 300-502B1D. 3, the eastern driveway must be discontinued. The applicant shall submit a plan showing how the access will be modified for review and approval by city staff. 300-603E, subsection 3, subsection D. 2 additional parking spaces shall be striped in the space. The project shall commence within 2 years of this approval and shall be substantially completed within 5 years of the date of the planning board decision unless a permit extension has been granted by the board. Deviation from this approval is subject to code enforcement action and potential legal proceedings per section 300-601 of the land use ordinance.
Second.
Thank you. You was first. Thanks, Bob. All in favor? Very good. Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is a public hearing. It's text amendments to the land use ordinance regarding residential land uses at street level in the Kennebec Business District 1, KBD 1. The planning board held one workshop on this about a month ago and to discuss these changes. And the board was in favor of not allowing new residential dwellings along the Water Street frontage. So this memo here gives some proposed text that's underlined in green that would be a change to the zoning for that district. So KBD 1 district, it would add a line that's saying residential land uses are not permitted within 30 feet of the face of the building at street level fronting Water Street, south of the Commercial Street intersection. So there had been some discussion at the last meeting about should we have a distance, like what should we look at for this? So I also provided the board with a copy of the Vickery subdivision plan, which shows some first floor retail and apartments on that floor. So you can see this building is sort of a typical depth for 60 foot deep from Water Street going back into the site. So that would leave about 30 feet for retail and 30 feet for the residential use at the back of the property. So that's why I guess I put in for the board to discuss not residential land uses are not permitted within 30 feet of the face of the building at street level fronting Water Street, south of the Commercial Street intersection. Obviously, the north of the Commercial Street intersection is primarily residential along Water Street. I mean, those are all kind of existing land uses. There's the Edwards Inn. There's other single-family residential and whatnot. So I think the concern was more about the area that's south of that, basically the railroad trestle intersection with Commercial Street. So, and then KBD 1, it doesn't, I mean, on the map here, you can see it doesn't go really much further, kind of past like where the fire station is. So that's the area of your bounds. So I don't know if the board has any comments or questions about that proposed language. And I guess if you're satisfied with the language, you could make a recommendation for City Council.
Any questions for Betsy? It's kind of straightforward for what we last discussed.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Bob.
I move that we recommend moving this on to the city council, and I appreciate that it just outlines exactly what was discussed and what we agreed to last time.
I also like being able to see an
Allison.
example of that.
Yeah.
And Allison second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Very good. Thank you. Next item.
Okay, and this item, and also the first one that we had on the agenda, and maybe this next one, anything that's recommended to city council, it will go and have an informational meeting at city council, and then there's typically 2 business meetings where the first reading, a second reading, and a vote. So any of these changes would be something that to the land use ordinance are officially set into place at city council level.
I have a question. Where this was a public hearing and I didn't ask anybody in the public, should I revise that, or is it understood that nobody is
no
here
one
from
here.
the public?
I would say we can note there is definitely nobody from the public here.
Okay,
We just
which is
have
why we didn't go
Tyler
do
Pease,
that.
our city
Okay,
engineer,
thank
yes.
you.
Thank you for bringing that up, yes.
Thank you.
People from the audience won't know that. So the next item is another public hearing. It's a text amendment to the land use ordinance regarding daycare and childcare per state law. So just like the last item on the agenda, we did a workshop on this. These are changes that the state of Maine has recently made to legislation for childcare facilities, and both LD 1428 and LD 2173. So it's basically expanding areas where we call them daycares in our ordinance, but where childcare facilities can be allowed in the city. So it's any area where it is zoned for residential purposes. So this memo outlines changes that would be proposed in the land use ordinance based on the discussions we had at the workshop and state law changes. So there are a few changes to definitions. One would be to change daycare home to daycare small, which would also mean a facility or a residence. And these facilities would no longer require a home occupation license because that would be, if it was a home one, because that would be over and above what a single-family home requirement would be. So it would be removing them from home occupations. Updated the parking to have daycare small and have none required, just because that's kind of maybe extra over and above, but it would just make it clear in the ordinance when people are looking through what the standards are. And let's see. I think, and then obviously changing the chart, the land use chart, so have daycare center and daycare small being permitted as an X in all districts except the IA, which is the industrial district, and the government services district, GS. And then I have the state law language in here too for you as well, just for ease of reference.
Thank you. Any questions for Betsy? Yeah.
I actually think I might have seen something that I didn't see last time, and I apologize for not seeing it. But in the state law on the last page, C, the definition, small child care facility means a house or other place not the residence of the operator. And those words really need to be, I believe, in our definition now, because we left out not the residence of the operator. We just say a facility or residence in which care is given during daytime hours to no more than 12 persons of various ages, and which may or may not be licensed. I think we have to say outside of the residence, don't we? Outside of their home residence? Not the residence of the operator.
There's an age limit too.
Excuse me?
And there's an age limit in there too. Under 13.
So what?
True, and there's an age limit in there.
So currently, we have the definition daycare home, which was for residents. So the change would be to daycare small to
Correct.
be a facility or residence, which would cover the 2 state definitions of family child care provider and small child care facility would both fall under daycare small.
I understand that, but I
Okay.
think the way this reads, they will think that they can have it in their own home. And the way I'm reading the state law, that's not what is said. Am I not interpreting that correctly?
So,
Unless,
yes, so I guess what I'm saying is that we have a daycare small definition in the Augusta ordinance, which would include both of those.
and we can't be more lenient than the state law, so it's understood that we must be at least the state law.
If not,
If not, and municipally, we could just be stronger. But is it,
Correct.
is Betsy, what you're saying is that it's understood because you're referencing those pieces, and Allison feels it probably isn't necessarily understood, it's unclear?
correct.
And if we just added those two words, would it change, if we put the words back that Allison says are missing, would it really change the essence of?
Okay, so daycare small,
Facility or residence.
defined as a family child care provider or small child care facility in the state, is that what you mean? Like, to encompass both of those definitions more specifically, is that what you're looking?
Well, I was just wanting to make it clear that a small daycare facility can no longer be in the home, unless I'm reading that
It
wrong.
can
The
be.
operator.
Can
The
be.
home of the operator.
Oh, not of the operator.
Right, it can be in a home, but not in the home of the operator. That's what it says right here, not the residence of the operator. And that's not clear the way that we wrote it.
I guess my intent was that the definition would also include, it would include B and C. It would include family child care provider, because that is 12 or less children. And then the small child care facility for the state is also 12 or less children.
B is in a person's home.
I think it would be more clear if we added language that says not in the provider's home.
So you'd want to eliminate home daycares in Augusta, is what you're saying?
But if this is state law
But
on the
this,
last page, isn't that what Allison is saying?
So
That
that's what I
it's
think it
prohibited to be,
says.
this definition prohibits it being in the operator's home?
Isn't this the state law as it's written? That you gave us?
I'm trying to figure out how to describe this. So
Yeah, I think both,
So Augusta's, obviously, as we know, Augusta's definitions do not match the state law definitions. My intent with the change to text here was to have both of the state definitions of family child care provider and small child care facility put under one definition in the Augusta land use ordinance, which is daycare small, because that land use cannot be, is looked at a little differently for parking purposes and whatnot. Obviously, there's some confusion, so I'm trying to figure out how to fix it.
right, because you put two in one, and one does allow in-home and the other one doesn't.
Correct.
Basically, if we put
So-
that wording in, we'd almost have to create
We have to create another,
a whole nother childcare provider, family childcare provider in the ordinance.
I mean, that would be basically like keeping daycare home as it is and adding another definition for small daycare, I guess.
Does the state allow a small facility in someone's home?
It allows it in a home, yes.
I think it's just a different licensing process for the state. Like they look at, there's a different level of licensing,
So you look at the
which is
state
why
law,
there's a
B
different
outlines
definition.
in a home.
So if we were to approve this is kind of like how we started the night. So if we approved the definition, it still has to be, a license still has to be given to state standards to a person,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Which would
period.
then
which would then remove our conversation out of this. We're just trying to make our definition more concise to be, it's hard to combine those two things when they're different, though.
Right, I guess, and that's why I had facility or residence. I was trying to do it that way, but
I see what you're saying and what you tried to do.
I'd say, or I don't know if I can fix
Fix
this
that
on the
tonight.
fly, so we might have to.
Let's revisit it, but that seems to be like the only, again, I
Yeah.
didn't catch
Just
that,
reconciling
Allison.
those definitions.
Yeah,
I guess in my mind, it's clear, but it's clearly not clear. So I guess, well, I'll try to see if we could figure
And
out
maybe it
how to
doesn't need be
improve
clear.
it.
I guess it just caught
Hmm.
me because I
Mm-hmm.
read it for the first time and said, we're missing some words, so.
Yeah,
Yeah. like
okay.
Put those words in, it eliminates this.
so we'll table this conversation.
I'd say we could table it and come back with some different language that might to
Both of those points.
right,
Yeah.
to clarify a little, yeah.
I move to table.
All right, thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Harold.
We vote?
All right, the public, there's no public here. So board, all in favor of tabling? All right, thank you very much. And now the minutes. I know, wow. I heard you say that earlier, and I'm like,
With forewarning, I had to find
Eva,
something
good job.
somewhere else.
Oh, Betsy this
oh,
time.
Betsy, oh.
Oh,
All right.
Glasses or?
Is everybody else satisfied
I
with
found
the
an
minutes?
error in one of her draft findings, so there.
she did, she did.
So,
Gotta keep her on her
motion to
toes.
approve the minutes
I
as
move
written.
we
Harold,
approve
thank
the
you.
minutes.
Harold second, all in favor? Very good, and Harold,
Motion to adjourn.
all right. Nate, and all in favor? All right, thank you, very good.